My dear stream friends, if you're just tuning in, you've missed an epic moment. And with the Terrible Fate streaming journey, that's right, we are now officially Twitch affiliates, which means we are sponsored by all of the biggest sponsors in the history of video game internet. We've got Shinra, we've got Umbrella, we've got the Gorman brothers, all very satisfied with what we're doing. You can see the stream is pimped out with very fancy people thinking very, very fancy thoughts about video games. If you subscribe now, you can access all of the best content in the universe, available exclusively on Twitch. If you can tell, even the resident dog on the stream is now extremely fancy. Very, very excited and amped, and you might even say hyped about everything we have in store for you on the new 2.0 edition of With the Terrible Fates. Amazing streaming service. You don't want to sleep on this. You have all sorts of tiers, very fancy subscriptions. You can get things that are better than even your best, most favorite DLC content for the low, low price of all the money you have here on Twitch. Now we'll have a few words from our sponsors, and then we'll get into your typical pre-roll content prior to the stream that you've been waiting for all your life. And I did. I know that Grail at least knows me at this point, but I did get dressed up for this. I got a whole bit and everything. Welcome. If you're wondering what the hell is going on, then you clearly have just stumbled in on the middle of something. Let me get you up to speed. I'm Aaron Suduko, the founder of WithTheTerribleFate.com, your publication home for all the most in-depth analyses of video game storytelling, trying to better understand and appreciate how these narratives work, what makes them so special that we return to them time and time again and celebrate them in so many different ways across our lives. And back in March, after running this publication mostly in a written format and a lecture style with a variety of incredibly incisive thinkers and gamers for the better part of, I guess at that point it was 7 years, now we're going on 8 just about, pushing a decade pretty much. But we've been doing those formats and I thought it was probably time to see if we could expand our footprint in terms of which sorts of media we used. I had thought about in the past, is Twitch something that makes sense for us? I understand that streaming is a big thing, but we're really interested in sort of slower motion reading and digestion of video game stories. I don't know if live stream content is really the right fit for that. But eventually, after spending more time with the Terrible Fate and just thinking about the various ways in which everyone loves to engage and talk about the media and stories in their lives, I figured, well, we might as well give it a shot and see if there is a With the Terrible Fate styled stream out there. And we kicked that off with the Tales of Praxis series, which is what you have found yourself in, doing a little bit of a joke bit to start this one off. But what you will typically expect from this Tales of Praxis streaming series is a bunch of live book clubs, pretty much, digging into the storytelling of Bandai Namco's Tales JRPGs. It's one half of a larger project that I undertook back in March, the other half being written articles, studying those same games that made a huge impact on me growing up, continue to inform a lot of how I think about philosophy in games and storytelling. And I thought, let's take the time to think about and explore these under the microscope in terms of their impact on us growing up and what we think about them now and how those are in dialogue with each other and how the games are in dialogue with each other, which it turns out happens to have a lot to do with the themes that these games are wrestling with and the various ways in which they invite us to think about ourselves, our place in the world, the ways in which we're called to action. So it's not all that With the Terrible Fates Twitch channel will ultimately do. We aspire to do more. It's good timing actually because I've been talking with a few analysts and people involved with the site who are interested in exploring what With the Terrible Fate streaming platform can do for them and what they can bring to it. We've also done some interviews in the past with the site more broadly, but with Twitch, we had a great conversation with Sean McGarry, the amazing creator who is putting together the Legend of Zelda Heroes Purpose fan fiction series on YouTube, which you might have heard of. So it's going to be lots of different things eventually. But what is exciting about this weekend, all jokes aside, is that as Aaron was joking about, we hit something of a pretty meaningful milestone where we've been doing this really from the ground up, where back in March, Aaron was just streaming out of a potato plugin for his PS5. And now we've reached the point where Twitch recognizes us at its lowest level of formal acknowledgement, basically, affiliate status. But that is really meaningful. It's don't worry, Grail. It's not going to corrupt me too much. It's not going to be Tales of Capitalism. No, but to me, the thing that is much more meaningful, and that I really did wake up with a smile on my face when I saw the email from Twitch to the site's account, was that what we do when it comes down to it on the stream, I think, 3 times a week for 3 hours at a time, is really like the serious literary study of video games, kind of all electing to come together and do a little kind of mini course and just engagement and in-depth conversation and analysis about games that we really care about. That's not to say it's not fun. Of course it's fun. That's why we keep coming back to it. But to me, that is just a remarkable signal of how video games really do loom. Wow. How large video games loom in the lives of so many people, that we really do love these stories, we care about them, and we want to understand what makes them tick. And it's a rewarding and fulfilling experience that we would take time out of our days to do and work on together. It's not something like an obligatory English class in school, in high school or college or anything like that, but it's doing a lot of the same kind of analytically rigorous work that we're coming to on our own terms. So that's something that to me was just such a wonderful and touching signal of gamers really recognizing and being interested in everything that With a Terrible Fate has been working on and advocating for the better part of a decade at this point. That does mean a lot. Grail, hopefully I will still be recognizable as the stream continues to evolve. But yeah, don't expect too much to change. I will say, kind of true to my own background, as much as I am a philosopher of games, I'm definitely a Luddite when it comes to things like Twitch, so I don't even know if I could change that many features of the setups if I tried. One thing that I've been really passionate about since I started With a Terrible Fate is that we don't want to do anything to do really with sponsored content or advertisements or anything that can get in the way of the analysis or its integrity, because at the end of the day, for us, that's what it's all about. So don't worry about having to wade through pre-roll or ads or anything like that on the channel. One thing that will be fun to play around with, as we've been talking about over the last few streams, is as we think about different subscription tiers and if there are particular kinds of access or different sub rewards or things that feel in the spirit of With a Terrible Fate, in the same way that I wanted to try to find a format for the stream, more generally speaking, that made sense for With a Terrible Fate. Those are the kinds of ways in which I'd like to see the stream evolve. And the people who are already here, I think, have a good sense of that. So especially if you're someone who recognizes what With a Terrible Fate is all about, and you want to help to guide or inform or recommend directions in which we could take things for the channel in the future, feel free to shoot recommendations. Tell me what you're thinking. I want to make this as useful and valuable to you as possible. And I will recognize on the stream, jokes aside, Grail being the very first person to sub means a lot, my friend. I know how much you appreciate us. I hope you know how much I appreciate you too. It's so nice to have a constant, thoughtful, and energetic presence, not just on the stream, but especially in the chat. That means a lot. So thank you, my friend. It is an absolute pleasure. Now that I'm done with the bit with which I opened the stream, I am indeed left with the suit for the rest of the stream. But that's okay. If you've watched any of our convention lectures in the past, you know that we actually always do dress up to lecture at those cons. People sometimes think we're cosplaying. It was something that really just started because back in the day, got to put yourself in the mindset of With a Terrible Fate starting out, which again was almost a decade ago, right? And so I think we're really blessed to live in a world that is continuing to evolve in the direction of better recognizing and just taking to be the norm the serious nature of video game storytelling and the fact that there's something there to be appreciated. Back a decade ago, there were certainly people who recognized that, but I would say it was less of the norm. And so I decided, this stuff means so much to us. We really care about taking it seriously and committing ourselves to the analyses in the same way that a serious academic would commit to her research program, and we want to show that. So that was where the buttoned up look kind of came from with the convention lectures, which we've kept going all the way into the present day. hopefully, it's not something that is meant to be intimidating. It's something that is meant to sort of quietly register and signal to people that this is an important thing and we care a lot about it. And if you spend time hanging out with us, as you do on the stream here, you hopefully know that it doesn't extend to things like stuffiness or inaccessibility. Quite to the contrary, we're here because we really love this stuff. We love it and want to analyze it and celebrate it in ways that academia per se, in some ways at least, remains too sanitized for, which is why, With the Terrible Fate is an analytical effort that exists by and large outside of the academy proper. But it's that wonderful intersection of analytical precision and passion for these games, which keeps us going. And you, as much as us now, are a major part of that. So I want to thank you again and welcome you to Tales of Praxis. I think it's going to be a really fun time. Hey, Doug, welcome back. I will call you Doug if that's okay, because that is easier for streamer brain Aaron to keep in his head. But welcome. Congratulations on the shawl. That sounds very, very awesome. That's true. Well, the good news is we totally skipped fall here in Colorado. It went from being 80 degrees to being 20 degrees. So I'm not in danger of dying of heat stroke, but you're right. If I do, there's no one to blame but me. Yeah, this is actually the suit that I wore to the last few cons, not to PAX West because I misplaced the top half of the suit for that, so I had to get a new one. But if you look back to footage of, for example, my Xenoblade Chronicles lecture at PAX East earlier this year, I was rocking the suit for that. Yeah, I think I wear suits for video game related reasons more so than for any other reasons, which tells me I've made good choices in my life. That's what I choose to take from it. Before we get back into Tales of Graces, which I am tremendously excited for, I think I had a few other updates besides the exciting affiliate news. The Beyond the Dawn schedule is still coming. I'm going to try to put together those nice graphics you sometimes see streamers do of just like a visual calendar, so it's easy for people to keep in their heads. But since we're on the stream, I'll tell the stream first roughly what I'm thinking. So Beyond the Dawn comes out on a Thursday. What I'm thinking is I want to be able to dedicate more time to it because I think that'll be fun for everyone who's interested in consuming it right when it comes out. I also want to be respectful of everyone's time and time zones and the way in which the stream typically operates. So what I'm thinking, and don't quote me on this, but I'll float the idea and we can see how it sits with us as much as anyone else who might be interested in joining. So I figure I'll run sort of a similar streaming schedule to what we usually do, but a little bit extended and padded. And what I mean by that is we'll start on Thursday with Beyond the Dawn, and then we'll dedicate that Friday to Beyond the Dawn also. And then I'll probably just run in the same time interval on Saturday and Sunday. I know those are days that we don't usually stream. If they don't work out for you, that's okay. The VODs will be on YouTube and everything. And then as we see how much may or may not be left of the DLC going into the next week, we can add additional streams while still working through Tales of Graces. But I figure I think it would be a lot of fun to try to digest it since it's new content in slightly larger chunks. So again, don't feel any compunction to show up for all of it. But what I figure to kind of stay in the same sweet spot more or less of what we've been doing is starting an hour earlier and ending an hour later. So nice 5-hour blocks to really digest and think about what they're doing with this Tales of Arise DLC as opposed to our typical 3-hour chunks. So that's what I'm thinking. Don't quote me on it. If it sounds good or bad, let me know. But that schedule will be out this week since, can you believe it? It's going to be November in a second, and then Beyond the Dawn will be out this coming week. I'm really excited, definitely overwhelmed, but excited to get things going with it. I'm still going to try to hold myself to getting the write-up of my views on Tales of Arise from PAX West out before then. I've been working on it. It's nice because if you've seen some of the write-ups I've done for convention lectures that I've then converted into articles after the fact, like my Code Vein interpretation, a lot of it comes directly from the lecture, but I add a lot after the fact based on conversations that I have afterwards and just thinking more about it and everything in between. So this is very much like that. You'll see a lot of the views that I talk about in terms of Tales of Arise versus Final Fantasy 16 if you watch the lecture, but I'm expanding it a little. I'm trying to think a little bit more about the foundational questions of why do we care about genre and what motivates reading something according to its native series as opposed to genre, and giving people a few more sort of practical guidelines for how they can make that work for them. I also, if you watch the lecture, you'll see that I intersperse Tales of Symphonia and Tales of Vesperia and Tales of the Abyss in my positive reading of Tales of Arise. I also... I don't want to add too much beyond what I already put in PAX West, but I've found myself thinking that there is a nice missing piece that ties things together quite well that actually I'd forgotten about in Tales of Fantasia. But I just finished that. I'm sure if I had worked through the other Tales games, there are a million other pieces of connective tissue that you could bring to bear on Tales of Arise. But hopefully there'll be enough of a tapestry for you to get a sense of where I'm coming from in terms of the value you can get by reading some of the later games in a series, specifically in conversation with and sort of built out of the games that have come before it, which should be fun. I'm having fun with it, so I hope it's fun for you too. And fun also to just go back to the comparisons between Tales of Arise and Final Fantasy XVI, because if you didn't watch the panel or if you haven't thought about this and you've played them both, I'm going to try to draw your attention to a lot of things that maybe you didn't dwell on, but the harder you look at those two games in conversation with one another, the more remarkably similar they are. And yet, I want to convince you they say very different things at the end of the day, which is part of why this whole inquiry is interesting and rewarding. Also, surprise, surprise, Aaron finished and wrapped up Fantasia, and he already has an idea that he's pretty excited about in terms of a perspective to bring using Tales of Fantasia as sort of a way to read the overall trilogy of Fantasia and Symphonia and Dawn of the New World in a way that I never thought about as a kid because I don't think I played them tightly enough together. And it's one of those fun perspectives you will be shocked to hear that also propagates outward to comment on and give us a perspective on what it is that we as players are doing when we pick up these games in various orders and tell these sort of collected mosaic stories out of our experiences with them over the years. So I'm not sure when in Aaron's timetable of many things to do for Tales of Praxis that will come out, but I am excited about it. Because that's all not enough, I, right after wrapping up Fantasia, picked up this bad boy, Tales of Eternia. That's what it's called. Ignore the Tales of Destiny 2, Tales of Localization craziness. But it's fun because it's one that I have never played before. I think that's the first time I've done that in terms of picking up brand new Tales content in a while, modulo the DLC for Tales of Zestiria, and then Tales of Arise's DLC coming up next week. But it's magnetic, it's wild, it's weird for a lot of reasons that I think, Grail, you were the one who was hinting at quite a while ago. But it's really fascinating to me, especially as a kind of... there's an evolutionary term for sort of like fossils that archaeologists have found that sort of indicate intermediate evolutionary stages between more clearly defined recognizable species. So far, and I'm only about like 8 or 9 hours in, but Tales of Eternia feels very much like that to me, where it's kind of like a missing piece where I can see the storytellers working through and thinking about a variety of different elements of the series that are familiar to me in later games that are kind of re-articulated or reimagined in ways where Tales of Eternia seem to plant the seeds for it a little bit. It's also much more fast-paced combat than you got in Tales of Destiny or Tales of Fantasia, so it makes the grinding feel a little more bearable, despite being one of those older school games still. So I'm sure I'll have plenty of more thoughts on that as I work through it, but the Tales adventure never ends. There's always more to Tales of Praxis, which is very fun. In other spooky news, you might know that tomorrow is this day called Halloween, and spooky games, scary games, everything to do with horror looms large and with a terrible fates analytical life. It also looms large in my life, and my friend and colleague Dan Hughes is a huge horror buff, as we've talked about before on the stream. So right after we're done with this stream, I'm actually going to be turning around and recording a horror podcast with him. That was something that, we talked about. Chrissy, I think it was you. I'm actually off of the chat right now, so forgive me for sending more messages. Yeah, so Chrissy has not shown up in the chat. Chrissy, I don't know if you're here, but if you find your way in or you stumble upon the VOD later, just to shout you out, I know you asked for more podcasts. I always want to do more podcasts, so we're going to sit down and talk about spooky games and what we're thinking about. I know I shared a while ago, and Grail, you read Dan's feelings and interpretation of Five Nights at Freddy's for his series on building the canon of video game stories. I don't know where this is going to go, but I told him that people have been rediscovering that article, unsurprisingly, because of the movie. And he actually took the time to, I think it would be fair to say, I haven't talked with him about it yet, but to suffer through the movie in preparation for this podcast. So I'm sure he's going to have plenty of views on that. He's been playing a lot of spooky stuff, so we're going to talk about that. I'm interested too, with all the JRPG stuff I've been working through, to just think about sort of the intersection between JRPGs and horror, because it strikes me as really interesting that you don't get that intersection, at least in the JRPGs that I've experienced, all too often. You get more of self-contained horror moments in JRPGs, and then you get things that are more of sort of intersectional genre works like Code Vein. Shout out to Bandai Namco again. But since I've been living in this JRPG hermetically sealed stream container for the last however many months, it's going to be fun for me to wrestle with that and wrestle with Dan in terms of his horror experiences. He's been playing through stuff like Lies of P, and I feel like there was another horror game, but he'll catch me up. That'll be out in time for Halloween tomorrow. So look forward to that. We can get spooky and enjoy that together as well. I think, take a breath. Those were a lot of updates, but we had a big milestone in the stream over the weekend. So how could we not kick off a new week with wonderful updates? We also had a big time jump in Tales of Graces. So we will be jumping back into that, pun intended, right after I catch up with your messages, and then we'll jump into it. Oh, there you go, Doug. I didn't realize it was a Halloween thing, but that's fantastic. Excited for you. Nice to be repping a series like Elder Scrolls for Halloween. That sounds like a fun time. I have an Artorias plushie from Dark Souls that I think it was last year. I did like a photo shoot with Evie and it. With the idea that she was dressing up as Sif, because for the life of me, I can't put her in an actual costume, but it's nice to do some natural crossover like that. Maybe we can do something low effort for Repeat this year with the whole Tales of Praxis, Namco Tales stuff going on. But I'll think about that. I have exactly one day to think about it, so plenty of time, as we know. Oh, well, sorry to hear that you would miss a Saturday stream, Grail. Well, I will definitely keep that in mind, knowing that you are such a big fan, and maybe I'll brainstorm and think about if there's another format to do that might be more amenable to you. But feel free to reach out with details of your schedule if that's something that interests you, because if I'm able to work around it, again, knowing what an ardent supporter you are of the stream, would love to be able to do that if it does work out. But don't worry, and don't feel as if the stream is beholden to you. It's all good, and we'll be able to enjoy it and talk about it either way. Oh, no worries, Chrissy. Sorry you're late too. I was shouting at, I don't know if you came in after this, but Dan and I are going to be doing a Halloween podcast just for you. We're recording it tonight, publishing it tomorrow. So you have that to look forward to. Hopefully you enjoy it. Let us know what you think. Oh, Grail. I was sitting with my stack of Tales games that I haven't replayed for Tales of Praxis yet. And I kid you not, like part of my my calculus in deciding what to play next on my own was, what would people want me to play on the stream? And what would I feel like, I'm not letting them down by playing on my own first. But I figured, I didn't want to touch Zillia at all for all we've talked about it and knowing how much you think of that. So it was really between like Eternia and, the stack's not in a place where we can see it. But I think really Eternia and Legendia were the other sort of mainline options that I hadn't played through already as part of Tales of Praxis, or then not working through like Tales of Graces. So, and we talked about Legendia before too. So, but I've said this before and I'll say it for everyone's benefit. My working through a game off stream for Tales of Praxis, like I've done with Abyss and Vesperia and Destiny, does not preclude us from later streaming it together. So certainly don't feel like it's off the table. It definitely does feel based so far. It's funny because I know we were talking, Grail, about the I don't know of a nice word to say about the voice acting. Just sort of the nutty lack of fit between the voice acting and the characters in the fictional world. Dan talks about this before, and I don't know whether I've said this on the stream, as a magical era where like voice acted localization was just starting in the States, and there was really no concept yet of how to direct voice actors for that localization. And so you get all of these nutty, unbelievable line readings. But I was saying to Evie earlier, as I was playing Tales of Eternia, like the themes and world structure and all the other elements of it are so fucking interesting that I almost feel like it needs an Achilles heel, like weird voice acting, because otherwise it would simply be too good. It would just blow people's minds too much. So between like the very interesting world and the hilariously like low fidelity graphics that are somewhere in between Tales of Destiny and Tales of Symphonia in a way that sort of takes, I don't want to say the worst of both worlds, but the worst of both worlds. And then the voice acting, like it's a wild experience and I can't look away and I'm loving it. So you'll definitely get many updates as I work through it. Yeah, absolutely, Chrissy. If there are any particular horror titles or things that are on your mind, I mean, there's no guarantee that Dan or I will have played them, but we'll definitely, we're open to chatting about whatever would be interesting to you. So you have specific horror questions, you have a game that you'd be interested in thinking about, let me know. I'll make a note and I'll kick it over to Dan because we're going to be recording right after this. I'm just going to roll through the stream, then take Evie out and then record, which should be fun. Stream every hour of every day, right? Well, it's funny, Grail. I signed this sick sponsorship deal with Shinra, and then I was reading the fine print, and it says that I have to stream and promote their Mako energy reactors 26 hours every day, or else they're going to put me in a vat of Mako and inject these weird cells into me. And so I'm going to have a conversation with my legal team about that at some point. So we'll see. All right. Rule of Rose and Forbidden Siren. I will copy that to my notes right now, Chrissy, so I don't forget. Cheers to you for that. All right. I think we're about on par with the preamble that we did last time. What are we rocking? 28 minutes? So slightly over, but honestly, again, that feels like we're beating par to me, especially on a day when we had such cool and unusual announcements to deal with as being affiliate status now. Someone will have to tell me what that means in layman's terms at some point, but I am incredibly excited about watching this, not just this stream, but this mode of engagement and conversation about video game stories and experience evolve with you all. And truly, I'm not gonna get weepy-eyed. I shared that mostly with the climaxes of JRPGs rather than poignant moments in my real life, but it is touching to me, and so I will thank you one more time, and we're gonna get back to Tales of Graces now. Oh, there you go. It's in the name. Great. Why didn't I think of that? If there's one lesson I've learned from JRPGs, especially the Tales games, it's that usually most of it is in the name. You just have to actually take the time to think about and reflect on the name, whether that's the name of the actual games or the names they use like Antilochea and Malkuth, to even things like the Eternal Sword. If you're trying to uncover the meaning of these games, do a little digging about the names. And Grail, we know, is the poster child for that because many has been the time he's looked up the names of optional bosses, only to find out that they have obscure meaning in particular mythological or religious traditions, which is very cool. So there you go. I titled this stream Losing Time, and it's losing time, not losing time. So Aaron's not declaring this is going to be a stream where he loses a lot. We'll save that for the EX dungeon at the end of Tales of Graces F. But I was trying to think of a way to situate us to get into this, similarly to what I did with Paradise Lost and with the idea of Shoshin, or Beginner's Mind. And I wanted to just remind us that after that traumatic childhood event that radically changed everything for our characters, with Asbel leaving his dad and leaving his presumed role as the next Lord of Lant to become a knight, Sophie dying according to Aston, Richard being attacked and spirited away back to the palace, and Hubert being traded like a baseball card to another noble family in a way I'm sure we'll find out. We jumped 7 years. It's a pretty substantial time skip. And it's a time skip that we've jumped in the narrative without the characters jumping through something like time travel. So I know I made the comparison with Ocarina of Time last time, but here's a way in which it's not the same thing, right? If you're familiar with Ocarina of Time, Link is pushed from his childhood 7 years into the future, basically to turn into someone who's sufficiently mature to take on Ganondorf, and he actually travels through time without growing up. What's going on in Tales of Graces F is something different. These characters, we have every reason to believe, have lived through those 7 years. There's no spooky time travel or metaphysical tomfoolery happening. It's just that we haven't seen those intervening 7 years, and so now we're going to be catching up with them and see how they've grown into adults. One thing that I wanted to plant in your head with this idea of lost time, I named the stream that way in reference to something that really happens when people go into dissociative states, and they talk about losing time, where they basically go out of their present tense experience and aren't able to process the things going on around them, oftentimes because of something traumatic which they're not able to cope with or think about. And so it's kind of like a defense mechanism of the body to kind of shut down those outer experiences for a time. And it can be really scary and disorienting, and it's a very real and serious thing. So I certainly don't want to belittle it by using it as a framework through which to read this game. But like we talked about at the end of last time, I think this is a really serious and meaningful game for the idea of dealing with trauma. So one idea that I wanted to plant in your head with this narrative time jump is that while we haven't had access to those 7 years, it's also going to be interesting, I think, to think about what the characters have done with it. Chrissy, I think it was you who mentioned at the end of the last stream, we really didn't get to see any aftermath of what happened with that traumatic event in the catacombs. We were just shepherded away 7 years into the future. And one thing that we might wonder about, given that we had that kind of time skip in this traumatic and then post-traumatic context, is, well, did the characters just lose time in the way that we did? Is there some sense in which, in going about their lives for the last 7 years, they have been avoiding experiences that would help them to process the trauma, and so they've kind of shoved it out of their mind or else repressed it? And so are they going to be forced back to that childhood context through this narrative lens to which we now again have access in a way that they didn't in the intervening time that wasn't a part of the story? So that's some food for thought as we get back into this. You might recall we got on the other end of the time skip with Asbel, who is now a knight in training, I think, training under Malik. But in any event, they are now going off to basically visit a town that has been Roanoaked, with everyone in the town kind of disappearing inexplicably in a very short amount of time. It's a forestry town. And we got access to a whole new palette of arts, the B arts. And I think that is more than enough to be caught up and ready to go. Yeah, he's a samurai now. There you go. Yeah, he went to get milk for his dad and he never came back. Exactly. Oh, that bums me out that I've already missed side scenes. For real? I thought we were pretty confident that we weren't going to have anything that was missable up until the time skip. Well, yes, we'll definitely have to try to find those. I can do some digging too. But yes, that is a reminder to me as much as anyone to go and pull up a side quest guide. I'll do that before the next stream. That could be my homework. I haven't done it, so if there are any particular side adventures or missable things that we know are going to be coming up in this stream, Grail or anyone else, feel free to shout it out. I want us to have access to as much of the content as possible. And it's one where I have not gone through that encyclopedic study of it on my own in the past, so we're going to need all the help we can get. The one other thing I'll say is just let me know how the audio comes out balance-wise. I listened to the VODs, and it seemed like the game volume was a little out of balance with mine and was a little too quiet, so I turned it up a little bit. If I overcorrected and you have trouble hearing me over the dialogue or whatever, just shoot me a chat message. Say, Aaron, you got to mess with it a little bit. It's very easy to fiddle with on the fly in OBS. So we'll get the right balance, and then I'll get a better converter, so the video quality will go up, and I imagine that'll probably fuck the audio balance again, and we'll have to retool it. But it's an ongoing process, as you know. Welcome back to Tales of Graces, my friends. I guess that counts as preamble too, so it's 35 minutes. That's a bit more extended than last time, but again, I'm going to say it was warranted this time around. Let's get back into it.
I want to give you something.
An Elith mixer, a mysterious device that can transform Elith into items. We need to refill its Elith at shops.
It's an Elith mixer.
We have some real battles ahead of us, so it should come in handy.
Yeah, there you go, Grail. Malik just gave Asbel a mission, and I'm giving you a mission.
I know you've probably trained with one before, but let's go over it again, just in case.
Oh, you might have been celebrating the mixer. I thought you were acknowledging the orders I gave you to help with the side quest navigation.
Yes, sir.
No, I know you're a good little soldier for the stream. You don't have to prove yourself. The Elith mixer is a tool used for cooking dishes during battle, and also for creating various items. So we're combining item synthesis and cooking mechanics into a single mixer. That's an interesting, an interesting mix, you might say. It's a device that belongs to the arsenal of any true warrior. First, let's set a rice ball to it. Go ahead and select a rice ball. Simple, no? Once the condition listed next to in battle is met, that little rice ball will automatically restore some of your HP. In other words, always have something in the mixer. So it's a little bit of the spirit of the, I think it's called the cooking pouch or the food bag, something like that. An older mechanic when you go back to old school Tales games like Fantasia and Destiny, where you can basically just pump generic food into a pouch, and then as you're walking around through towns and dungeons and everything, it naturally depletes and restores your party. So the same kind of ethos, but in a different, more modernized system. Right now, up to 3 items can be set at once. Go ahead and select one of the empty slots. Oh, Chrissy! All of the true fans who've been here all along are subbing and rising to the occasion now that we're affiliate status. Well, that means a lot. Let me thank you sincerely. I mean, I know I don't have to explain to either of you two that you and all the other thoughtful thinkers and gamers and fans of this amazing medium out there are why we do what we do and are really the bigger part of what With a Terrible Fate is at the end of the day. So seriously, thank you. It means a lot. Well, I do love not dying later in the game, Grail. But no, I remember this system, like the overall gameplay systems, plural, of Tales of Graces as something that felt sophisticated and, took effort for me to get into, but really did motivate me to learn them such that I was enjoying them and felt like I had a handle on them by the end of the game, back when I played it years and years ago. So I'm hopeful that will ring true now as well, and I don't see any reason why it won't. This time, let's set an apple gel. All right. Hey, it can be out of boundless generosity while also being free, Chrissy. I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive. No, support is support, and I treat it as such. Yeah, no, Shaw, that feels right to me too, Duke. Your aesthetic sensibilities are admirable. When you set certain items to the mixer, it'll produce more of them while you're out and about. If you see, while traveling, 10% production chance, that means there's a 10% chance the item will be produced after a minute or so of walking around. Oh, so we're also weaving in some of the ethos behind the field skills that we got in Tales of Vesperia, but in a way that is feels, at least right now, and I don't want to be biased, but this feels more manageable and intuitive to me than those field skills were. But maybe that's just because I never gave the field skills a chance. Once an item is in your collector's book, you can set it even if you're not carrying any. That is cool. So you can produce items that you don't currently have. assuming you've gotten them before. Now let's try removing the apple gel. And I know we said this last time, I think it was you who called it out, Grail, but the way in which they really walk you through all of the systems in these tutorials, some people might see it as hand-holding. It helps for me to kind of get them internalized so I know what to do and it doesn't feel like an impassable barrier to entry to try to get into them later on. The Eleth mixer is handy, but it's not free. It can't produce items without Eleth. Fortunately, you can charge Eleth at most shops, so don't forget to fill up whenever you can. I do, yes, and anything that can help me avoid a grind, I'm here for. Yeah, at least I'm not the only one who feels that way, Grail, so thank you for making me feel seen. Yeah, agreed, Chrissy. Lastly, as you know, Eleth mixers are tools that develop over time. By cooking dishes, you can increase the maximum amount of Eleth the mixer can store. And by producing materials, you can increase the number of item slots. It's like the old saying goes, he who rules the mixer rules the battle.
That's it. Now let's return to the mission.
I do love the idea that the tech you use can evolve according to your using it over time. That's something that I'm surprised we don't see more of overall in the series because it feels very consonant with a lot of the themes and just approach to technology over the course of these games. I suppose you could think of Swordians in the same way, though, and there are probably more examples if I actually take a second to sit down and write them out as opposed to just talking out of my ass. Yeah, I kind of had the same feeling, Grail, with the commentary of, oh, you already know this, or like, I know I'm already explaining to you something that we talked about earlier. So maybe then part of it, that can be a fun thing to keep track of as we go on and see different tutorials. Maybe it's not so much that there are, different disembodied third-person voices who are interjecting in different contexts, but more that they're localized to the particular contexts and conversations that are serving as introductions for those tutorials.
Let's get this underway.
Great work, Captain.
You're not doing so bad there yourself, Asbel.
Asbel learned parry heal. Oh, I like that. If you continue to guard while in the green aura state, a red light will surround your body. This is the red aura, otherwise known as the best aura, and it allows you to break through an enemy's guard and prevent it from evading. This is the last of the 3 guard auras. Yeah, I was just thinking that I need to do that, Grail. Thank you. The arts menu allows you to set B arts to the left stick at any time. You can also press start to set shortcuts to the right stick. These shortcuts can be used to access your current character's arts, or they can be used to order the other party members to use specific arts of your choosing. I also remember this game, maybe it's just the way it distributes arts versus shortcuts across the 2 sticks, but for whatever reason, it remains in my mind as one of the Tales games that had the most intuitive and useful layouts for shortcuts, where you can basically issue commands to other characters besides the one you're controlling to use particular arts. Yes, Chrissy, I know exactly what you're talking about. That holds up to me as one of my favorite ways of weaving tutorials into a game's story in a way that's fun and makes sense for its characters. It struck me all the more when I replayed it last year. And it makes sense because it's one of those great cases in which it totally makes sense that the avatar would have plenty of reason to know a bunch of things that weren't intuitive to the player. So manufacturing these circumstances according to which the avatar himself can explain those things and the player can by association, learn them is really satisfying to me. Okay, we have Shockwave Slash, a horizontal swing that gouges a wave of crushing force out of the earth. Alright. We have 2. That's a start. And did he Yes, okay, so it automatically switched titles after we filled out the skills on that one. I love that. And this one we already have 3, so I feel like that's a good place to start. My god, I forgot how many titles there are in this game. That's exciting, but a little overwhelming. Let's see how it goes. Alright, and we are off. Try not to be too bummed out that we already missed some side scenes, because I feel like, especially for all we were saying about the childhood arc, those scenes would have a special kind of meaning and import. But those are the sorts of near misses that YouTube is great for. Yeah, that's a good point. Asbel is the main character, so maybe I shouldn't feel too overwhelmed by his titles as a proxy for all the titles that others will get as well. That just makes me sad for both of us, though, dude. Yeah. Well, if you find the links to them or a good video that rounds them out, rounds them up, feel free to share. That'd be useful. Burst arts or B arts are now available in battle. At the cost of 1 CC, Asbel can draw his sword at any time and gain access to a whole new set of attacks. Use Use circle to draw your sword and unleash B arts, and use X when you want to sheath the weapon. Good. I was hoping we would get the system explained slightly more than we already had, because I still felt a little bit at a loss about it.
Game on! There! Won't live your... Okay, roll him down! Gotcha!
Not bad, don't you think?
Oh, are we having streaming issues? Oh yeah, that's weird actually. I'm seeing on OBS. No, I don't think it's you guys. We're dropping a lot of frames. That's very weird. Oh, you know what it might be? Alright. The stream might dip for a sec. I'm running a VPN, which I don't usually, so my guess is that's the issue. Let me see if I can fix it. And if it crashes the whole stream, I'm